Have you ever given it your all, and no one seemed to notice? You show up on time, do the work, no complaints, no excuses, just quiet effort day after day. Meanwhile, the world stays loud. People are drawn to the flashy ones, the big talkers, the bright lights. But you just keep walking, even when you're tired, even when no one claps. That kind of silence over time can make you wonder, am I even on the right path? Does anyone actually see me? This is the story of a young airman, a man who walked 10 miles to base every single day. Not for fitness, not as punishment, just because he didn't have a car. And because he believed to serve means to show up. No applause needed, no spotlight required. Tyler Brooks never thought anyone was watching. But one ordinary morning as he walked that same dusty road, a car passed by, and inside that car was the President of the United States. That moment, quiet, unplanned, would change Tyler's life forever. Because sometimes the road you build with your own 2 feet leads somewhere no one ever expected. The sun hadn't even broken the horizon yet, and the roads outside San Antonio still wore their thin layer of Texas dust. But Tyler Brooks was already walking boots, laced head-down backpack secured 10 miles ahead of him. He wasn't late. He wasn't punished. He wasn't lost. He was just doing what he did every day. 20 years old and airman. First-class Tyler didn't own a car. Never had. Didn't complain about it either. Every morning, long before the base horn blew reveille, he was on the move, quiet, steady, alone. Some mornings he'd be passed by fellow airmen in trucks or cars. A few slowed down, offered a lift. Tyler always declined with a polite nod and a quick smile. All good, he'd say. And he meant it. He wasn't looking for sympathy. He was raised on grit. His grandfather, a Vietnam vet from the hills of Arkansas, used to tell him, "You earn your way in this world 1 mile at a time." And Tyler believed that. Every step to Lackland Air Force Base was part of something bigger, part of a code he didn't need to say out loud. That morning, as he passed the small gas station on Route 16, the old man behind the register leaned out the door with a coffee in hand. 10 miles again today, son?" "Yes, sir," Tyler answered, shifting the strap on his shoulder. "Same as always." Inside, the television was already buzzing with the morning news. One headline crawled across the bottom of the screen: President Trump scheduled to speak at Lackland today. Tyler glanced at it uninterested and kept walking. He had no idea that just a few hours from now his footsteps would echo far beyond that long stretch of asphalt. He didn't know that someone important, someone riding in a motorcade with flags on the hood and armored doors, would see something in his march. Not the distance, not the sweat, but the dignity. The kind of quiet strength that doesn't shout. The kind of discipline that doesn't need an audience. The kind of walk that earns respect, simply by never stopping. No car in sight. And he's walking like it's not the first time. They passed him in seconds, but something about that moment stayed with the president. Not the way the kid looked, but the way he moved. There was no sign of struggle, no begging, no drama, just a rhythm, just a purpose. Like he was on a mission no one else had been assigned. Trump leaned back in his seat, eyes still narrowed. "He looks like someone with something to prove," he said quietly. Not to the world, just to himself. "Should we stop?" McAdams asked. Trump shook his head. "Let him walk, but find out who he is." The convoy surged forward. But back on that stretch of road, Tyler Brooks kept walking, unaware that behind a sheet of presidential-grade glass someone had just seen him, really seen him, not for what he lacked, but for what he carried. The motorcade rolled like thunder across the edges of San Antonio, a convoy of polished black SUVs and government-grade armor. Inside one of them, the President of the United States sat beside his military advisor, General McAdams, scanning the dusty roads through tinted bulletproof glass. Trump had done hundreds of base visits in his lifetime, met thousands of troops, heard the speeches, shaken the hands. Today was supposed to be routine. But as the convoy moved through a quiet stretch of highway, no signs, no flags, no crowds, something caught his eye. "Hold on," he said, pointing out the window. A lone figure walked along the shoulder of the road. Head down, boots hitting gravel in rhythm, a backpack pulled tight against his shoulders. He didn't look up. He didn't even flinch as the convoy flew by. "That kid military?" Trump asked. General McAdams squinted. "Could be. Off-duty, maybe. Civilian clothes. Probably headed somewhere." 10 miles out, Trump muttered. No car in sight. And he's walking like it's not the first time. They passed him in seconds, but something about that moment stayed with the president. Not the way the kid looked, but the way he moved. There was no sign of struggle, no begging, no drama, just a rhythm, just a purpose, like he was on a mission no one else had been assigned. Trump leaned back in his seat, eyes still narrowed. "He looks like someone with something to prove," he said quietly. Not to the world, just to himself. "Should we stop?" McAdams asked. Trump shook his head. "Let him walk, but find out who he is." The convoy surged forward. But back on that stretch of road, Tyler Brooks kept walking, unaware that behind a sheet of presidential-grade glass someone had just seen him, really seen him, not for what he lacked, but for what he carried. By the time the presidential convoy reached Lackland, the gears behind the scenes were already turning. Staffers moved quickly, files were pulled, camera footage was scanned frame by frame. The kid with the backpack had made an impression. "His name's Tyler Brooks," one aide said, holding up a folder. "Airman first class, 20 years old, assigned here. Walks to base every day 10 miles. Trump flipped through the papers. Why no car? Grew up poor, raised by his grandfather. Refused the base shuttle program, said he didn't want special treatment. The president looked up. "You're telling me this kid puts on his uniform and walks 10 miles a day, just to show up on time?" "Yes, sir. Rain or shine. Doesn't complain. Doesn't ask for anything." Trump closed the folder, but not the thought. "Get me his commanding officer." Meanwhile, across the base, Tyler stood in formation like he did every morning. Focused. On time. Shirt pressed, boots clean. He had no idea his name had reached the West Wing. Colonel Hayes, his CO, was called into a quiet meeting. "Airman Brooks," Trump asked directly. "One of the best we've got," Hayes replied. "Hard-working, never late, never asks for favors. Honestly, sir, we didn't even realize how far he was walking until someone mentioned it last week." Trump nodded slowly. "I want to meet him." Hayes paused. "Should I let him know?" "No," Trump said firmly. "Don't say a word. I want to see how he carries himself when he thinks no one is watching. That's when character shows." The next morning, Tyler laced up his boots the way he always did. Nothing felt different. He hadn't heard a thing about the visit. He didn't care much for politics anyway. His grandfather's old dog tags hung around his neck, tucked under his t-shirt. As he walked past the same old gas station, the clerk waved. "You know the president came through yesterday?" Tyler nodded faintly. "Yeah, I heard. You think he saw you?" Tyler chuckled under his breath. "Doubt it." He kept walking, one foot in front of the other. No idea the man behind the motorcade hadn't just seen him, but remembered him. And that somewhere inside Hangar 4 the stage was already being set. The day started like any other. Same laces, same boots, same long stretch of quiet highway. Tyler was used to the solitude by now. He didn't need music or company. The rhythm of his own steps was enough. But something felt different. When he reached the base gate earlier than usual, a military transport van pulled up beside him. The driver leaned out. "You Airman Brooks?" "Yes, sir," Tyler replied instinctively, standing a little straighter. "Hop in. You're needed at Hangar 4. Tyler blinked. "Am I in trouble?" The driver smirked. "Not my department, son. I just go where they tell me." As the van rumbled toward the far end of the base, Tyler sat in silence. He replayed the past few days in his head, trying to figure out what this was about. Nothing made sense. Hangar 4 wasn't where briefings were held. It wasn't where paperwork was filed. It was where important things happened. When the van stopped, Tyler stepped out and instantly noticed how quiet it was. Too quiet. No aircraft engines, no loading sounds, just the hollow echo of his boots on concrete. A tall man in uniform met him at the entrance. "Airman Brooks, please wait inside." Tyler walked in slowly, eyes adjusting to the dim light. For a moment, he stood alone in the vast, empty space, just him and the dust dancing in the sunbeams cutting through high windows. Then the hangar doors creaked open. Secret Service agents entered first, sweeping the space with trained eyes. And behind them, without fanfare or cameras, walked in President Donald J. Trump. Tyler snapped to attention before his brain had time to catch up. "At ease, son," Trump said, stepping forward with a warm, focused look. Tyler lowered his stance, still stiff with uncertainty. "I saw you the other morning," Trump said calmly. "On the highway. Walking." "Yes, sir. 10 miles. "Yes, sir." Trump tilted his head. Why, Tyler took a breath. "I don't believe in handouts. My grandfather, he always said, if you've got 2 legs, you've got no excuses. I walk because I signed up to show up." The hangar went quiet again. Trump studied him, the silence stretching like a test. "You don't do it for recognition." "No, sir. I do it because I serve." What the president said next wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't part of a speech. He placed a hand on Tyler's shoulder and said quietly, "Then maybe it's time someone walked a few miles for you." Tyler blinked. He didn't understand. Trump looked to his aide. "Bring it in." The doors opened again and in rolled a brand new black Ford F-150, military plates gleaming under the lights. "This is yours," Trump said. Tyler stepped back instinctively. "Sir, I can't accept that." "You didn't ask for anything," Trump said, interrupting. "That's exactly why you deserve it." Tyler tried to speak, but the words got lost somewhere behind the lump in his throat. "We already handled the paperwork," an aide added. "Insurance, gas card, maintenance plan. No strings attached." Trump smiled. "From the American people, through me." A few fellow airmen had gathered silently in the hangar. They began to applaud, but Tyler didn't look at the truck. He looked at the man. And for the first time, he realized that being noticed didn't mean being loud. It didn't mean stepping into the spotlight. It just meant being seen for who you truly are. Tyler sat behind the wheel like he wasn't sure he was allowed to touch it. The truck gleamed under the Texas sun, spotless, brand new, still carrying that faint, leathery scent of something never used. He rested both hands on the steering wheel, not turning the key just yet. For the first time in years, he wasn't walking home. He exhaled slow and full, then finally twisted the ignition. The engine rumbled to life, a low, steady hum that seemed to settle deep in his chest. It didn't feel like a reward. It felt like respect. As he pulled onto the familiar stretch of road, landmarks flew by the cracked pavement, the shoulder lined with brush, the potholes he knew by memory. They blurred now no longer beneath his boots, but under his wheels. When he passed the gas station, the old clerk stepped out and tipped his cap wide-eyed and grinning. Tyler honked once and laughed. It came out rough, like he wasn't used to doing it. By the time he turned into his small apartment complex, neighbors had already gathered on their balconies, craning to see. One of them shouted, "Yo, Tyler, is that yours?" Tyler shrugged, half smiling. Apparently. His buddy Carter sprinted down the stairs. "Dude, what happened?" Tyler looked at him, eyes still trying to catch up to the moment. "The president saw me walking." That was all he said. That was all he needed to say. By morning, the world knew. Local news aired the footage first, a short segment about a young airman receiving a truck from the president. But within hours, it was everywhere. President surprises airman with truck after learning he walks 10 miles to work. A quiet hero gets noticed. The Walker of Lackland. Clips from base security, snippets of the surprise. A photo of Tyler still in uniform, keys in hand, stunned and speechless. The internet lit up. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Hashtags started trending. Tyler the Walker. Quiet strength. Silent service. Everyone wanted to know who was this kid who didn't ask for help. Why didn't he take the shuttle? Why did he still walk every day? Articles told the story about his grandfather, a Vietnam veteran who raised him after his parents disappeared from the picture. About how Tyler graduated top of his high school class. About how he signed up not to escape, but to serve. Interview requests flooded in. News anchors wanted him live. Talk shows offered to fly him out. Tyler said no to almost all of them. "I didn't do it for the cameras," he told one local reporter. "I did it because that's what showing up looks like." That quote 12 words got shared more than anything else. Meanwhile, back in Washington, President Trump tweeted a single sentence that went viral on its own. Met an incredible young airman today, Tyler Brooks. Walks 10 miles daily to serve our country. Never asked for a thing. A true American hero. Honored to help. But not everyone watching the news was a stranger. At a recovery home several states away, an older woman sat in a quiet room with trembling hands and teary eyes. Her name was Janine Brooks. She hadn't seen her son in over a decade. She whispered to the nurse beside her, voice cracking, "That's my boy." The envelope came with no warning, no return address, no fancy seal. Just a plain cream-colored envelope with Tyler's name written in shaky, looping cursive. He found it tucked in his mailbox at the base, buried between routine memos and training updates. He almost missed it. But something about the handwriting stopped him. It looked older, familiar, but distant. He stood in the hallway, the fluorescent lights humming above, and opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten, the ink slightly smudged. The first line nearly made his hands go cold. "Dear Tyler, I don't know if you remember me. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. I was sick for a long time, lost in my mind and in addiction. I wasn't there when you needed a mother." Tyler froze. He didn't need to read the signature to know who had written it. "I saw you on TV yesterday. You looked just like your father. Strong, quiet, proud. I'm so sorry, son, for everything. I've been clean for 4 years now, living in a recovery home. I never thought I'd see you again, let alone like this. But if you ever want to, if you ever think you could forgive me, I'd love to see you again. Always, Mom, Janine." Brooks. Tyler read it twice, then folded it slowly as if the paper itself might break apart. He hadn't spoken of his mother in years, not to anyone. His grandfather told him she went away when he was 10. No explanation, no closure, just absence. And now, after all these years, she reappeared because of a walk, a truck, and a moment he hadn't even planned. He didn't know what to feel. Anger, grief, hope. He slipped the letter into his locker and stared at it in silence, the edges just barely poking out. Some roads take us forward, some take us back, and some force us to face the parts we've buried. The drive was quiet. No music, no distractions. Just the sound of tires humming along the highway and the distant echo of a heart that hadn't decided whether it was ready to break or to heal. Tyler gripped the steering wheel tighter than usual as he pulled into the gravel lot of Willow Pines Recovery Center. Beige siding, a few flower beds, a flag waving half-heartedly in the summer breeze. He sat there in the parked truck for a long time. This wasn't a military base. There were no commands, no formations, no salutes, just uncertainty and a hallway that led to someone he hadn't seen since he was 10 years old. His mother. Finally, he stepped out, boots crunching the gravel. A kind nurse met him at the door. "You must be Tyler," she said gently. "She's been talking about this all week." He followed her down a hallway lined with framed photos, people smiling, painting, planting flowers, laughing, healing. They stopped outside a small room. "She's in there," the nurse whispered. Tyler took a breath and opened the door. There she was, smaller than he remembered, frail, sitting in a wheelchair by the window, her hands folded neatly in her lap, staring out into the light. She turned when the door creaked open and her breath caught. "Tyler." Her voice cracked like an old radio dial. She didn't know whether to smile or cry. In truth, she did both. He stood in the doorway, frozen. He barely recognized her face. But those eyes, those were the eyes that used to tuck him in at night, before the pills, before the silence. "Hi, Mom." Her lips trembled. "I didn't know if you'd come." He walked toward her slowly, like approaching a memory that might disappear if he got too close. He sat in the chair across from her. Neither of them spoke for a while. The silence said everything. 10 years of birthdays, missed holidays, nights crying into pillows, guilt, distance, questions no child should have to ask. Finally, he broke it. "Why now, I was afraid," she whispered. "Afraid I didn't deserve to be found. But then I saw you, and I couldn't stay quiet anymore." She reached out a shaking hand. "I'm proud of you," she said. "And I'm sorry." He didn't pull away. His voice was low, tight in his throat. "I'm still angry," he admitted. "But I want to understand." Tears welled in her eyes. Sometimes healing doesn't begin with answers. It begins with presence. They sat there longer than either of them expected. What started as silence turned into small conversation. Stories spilled out in fragments, her addiction after his father died, her shame how she'd watched the funeral from afar, but couldn't bring herself to step forward. "I missed so much," she said. "Missed watching you become who you are. I stopped hoping you'd come back." "I stopped hoping too," Tyler replied softly. "But I never stopped wondering." They laughed about things that once hurt, recalled his love for toy jets, her lasagna, the bedtime songs. "I still have your toy plane," she said suddenly. "Your grandfather sent it to me one Christmas. I kept it. That broke him." He smiled through tears, not the kind that fall quietly, the kind that crack you open and let the air back in. As the sun sank outside the window, Tyler stood up. "Can I come back?" She looked at him like he had just given her breath. "Please," she whispered. He nodded. "Next time," he said, "I'll bring the plane." She laughed, covering her mouth, tears still glistening. "I'd love that." Outside, Tyler leaned against his truck, letting the last light of day wash over him. The air smelled of lavender and earth. His chest ached, not with pain, but with release. Something had shifted inside him. It wasn't closure, but it was a beginning. The phone rang during a quiet evening just after sunset. The kind of call that makes you stand a little straighter without even thinking. Tyler didn't recognize the number. "Hello, Airman Brooks." "Yes, sir. This is President Trump. I hope I'm not interrupting anything." Tyler froze. "No, sir. Not at all." There was a pause, not awkward, but intentional, like someone choosing the right words instead of reaching for the easy ones. "I saw the update," Trump said. "Heard you visited your mother?" Tyler swallowed hard. "Yes, sir. I just wanted to tell you." The president continued, voice softer than before, that took more guts than anything we did on that base. Tyler didn't know what to say. How did you know?" Trump chuckled, not loud, just enough to show warmth. "Let's just say the story traveled. Some stories deserve to. Then came silence again. The kind where meaning hangs heavier than noise. You know, Trump said, "I've met world leaders, kings, CEOs. But it's these kinds of acts, the quiet ones, that stay with me. You're not just serving the country, son. You're healing a family. That matters." Thank you, sir. Trump's tone shifted slightly more businesslike now, but still personal. I wanted to ask, would you be okay if we shared that part of your story? Not publicly, just privately. With a few veterans I know, some of them are struggling. They could use a reason to believe in redemption again. Tyler didn't answer right away. Then, if it helps someone else, yes, you can. Good man Trump said, the pride clear in his voice. Before hanging up, he added one last thing. You've got the kind of strength this country was built on. Don't ever forget that. And then, click. No press release, no spotlight, just a call from one man to another. Not from a podium, but from a place of recognition. The kind that doesn't need applause to be real. The auditorium was filled with quiet excitement. Rows of families sat shoulder to shoulder, watching proudly as a fresh class of airmen prepared to graduate. Flags hung from the rafters, boots were polished, smiles tried to hold back tears. Tyler wasn't there to graduate. He was there for Carter, his closest friend on base, who had just completed tech school after months of grinding study and sleep-deprived nights. Carter had no family attending. His father had passed years ago. His mother was too ill to travel. Tyler had promised simply, "I'll be there." And he was. The ceremony began. One by one, airmen marched to the stage, shook hands, received certificates. When Carter's name was called, Tyler stood a little taller in the crowd. But someone caught his eye. In the front row, just beside an empty chair marked, "In honor of absent family," sat a man in a dark suit. No Secret Service swarm, no announcement, just presence. President Trump. Tyler blinked. He hadn't been introduced. No press was following, no cameras in sight. He just showed up. Carter, walking off the stage, saw him too. His eyes widened, but he didn't freeze. He turned toward the crowd, stood at attention, and saluted. Trump, from his seat, returned the gesture with a subtle nod. Later, after the ceremony, Tyler caught up with him. "You didn't have to come," he said. "I know," Trump replied, "but I remembered something you told me once." Tyler tilted his head. "You said," Trump continued, "some people show up even when it's hard." He smiled. "Thought maybe I'd try that too." That moment didn't make the news, but it didn't need to. Because sometimes showing up isn't for the headlines. It's for the one person who thought no one would. A week later, there was no press conference, no red carpet, just a quiet post on a government website easy to miss if you weren't looking for it. The office of the president announces the launch of a new military initiative, Miles for Service. The program was simple but powerful. Transportation grants for active duty servicemen and women who were struggling to get to work. No strings, no fanfare, just support offered with dignity. The first recipient. A single mother stationed in Arizona who walked 6 miles each morning to her base and back again in the evening. The second, a Navy mechanic in Virginia who biked to work every day, rain or shine, because his car had broken down 3 years earlier and he couldn't afford a new one. Neither of them knew Tyler Brooks, but both had heard the story. They knew what it meant to walk when no one saw. They knew what it felt like to be tired and keep going anyway. And now, thanks to a story that was never meant to be told, their journey was just a little bit lighter. Tyler read about the program in a short article passed to him by his CO. The headline was tucked between a story on budget reform and a base reorganization memo. But for him, it might as well have been front-page news. He folded the paper once and tucked it into the back of his notebook, the same one he used to log his runs, his training scores, and now, his turning points. That night, he opened it and wrote a single sentence, "One step when noticed can pave the way for others." He hadn't asked to be seen. He hadn't walked for attention. But knowing that someone else's feet were walking easier now, that was everything. The knock on the door wasn't urgent, just a soft rhythm followed by the familiar voice of Commander Reyes. "Brooks, you got a minute?" Tyler stood from his bunk. "Yes, sir." "Come with me," Reyes said, gesturing toward his office. "There's someone I'd like you to meet." When they stepped inside, a woman stood waiting, not in uniform, but with a notebook in one hand and a camera bag in the other. She looked professional, but not polished. Kind, not scripted. "This is Jenna Myers," the commander said. "She's a journalist working on a piece about quiet resilience in the military. Not a media circus. Just stories that matter." Tyler nodded slowly. "I'm not really used to cameras." Jenna offered a gentle smile. "Then don't worry. I'm not here to make you look heroic. I'm here because what you did, it's the kind of thing that reminds people how strong quiet can be." He sat down across from her, still unsure. The questions started simple when he enlisted what inspired him, what his grandfather was like. But then she asked about the walking. His voice softened. "I didn't do it for the story," he said. "I did it because I didn't have another way. And because when you sign up to serve, you show up, even when no one's watching." She scribbled quickly but respectfully, then more gently, "And your mother. That part of your journey. Do you want to talk about it?" Tyler paused, not because he didn't want to, but because he wanted to say it right. "Forgiveness isn't easy," he finally said. "But sometimes you don't do it just for them. You do it so you can breathe again." The room went quiet. Jenna didn't ask any more questions for a while. She just nodded, eyes full but steady. "People are going to feel this," she said softly. Tyler looked down at his hands. Then maybe it was worth it. The article dropped a week later. It didn't have a dramatic title, just a simple, steady one. "The airman who walked alone and changed the path for thousands." It spread like wildfire. Not because it was flashy, but because it was real. The article had gone live a week ago. Tyler didn't follow the comments, didn't check the shares. He had asked Jenna not to tag him on anything. "I'm not trying to go viral," he'd said with a shrug. But one envelope tucked neatly in the base mailroom caught his attention. No return address. No stamp from a major publication, just his name written in ballpoint pen. He opened it slowly. "Dear Tyler, I read your story and cried. I'm not a soldier. I'm just a dad. A single father raising a boy who's smarter than I'll ever be, working 2 jobs trying to keep the lights on and food in the fridge. There are days I want to quit. When my legs hurt, when the bus is late, when I feel invisible. But reading how you kept walking, how you forgave. It reminded me that strength doesn't always look like shouting. Sometimes it looks like showing up when no one claps and no one sees. Thank you for reminding me to keep going. Bryan, Pennsylvania." Tyler read it twice, then again. Not because the words were long, but because they landed deep. He didn't know this man, would probably never meet him. But somehow they'd walked the same stretch of road in different cities, wearing different shoes, carrying different weight, and yet, side by side. He folded the letter carefully and placed it in his notebook, the same one where he kept mission logs and personal reflections. And on the next page, he wrote one more sentence. "Sometimes when you walk far enough, someone else finds the strength to stand." The summons came without detail, just an official notice to report to base command at 0800 hours, full dress uniform. Tyler didn't ask questions. He pressed his shirt, shined his shoes, and arrived early. When he stepped into the room, he expected a briefing. Instead, he found the commander, several high-ranking officers, and one man standing quietly at the front, the President of the United States. Trump turned and gave a slight nod. "At ease, Airman Brooks." Tyler obeyed, though his pulse was loud in his ears. No cameras, no national anthem, just a silence, thick with meaning. "We don't often do this," Trump began. "But every once in a while, someone reminds us what service really looks like." He held a velvet box in both hands. "Tyler Brooks," he continued, "you've shown this country that strength doesn't have to be loud, that courage doesn't always wear medals or carry a weapon. You woke up, laced your boots, and walked toward duty every single day without applause, without expectation. And in doing so, you inspired a nation." Trump opened the box. Inside, a silver medallion bordered in deep navy blue. At the center, etched in quiet simplicity, Presidential Medal of Quiet Valor. There had never been one before. This was the first. Trump leaned in and fastened the ribbon around Tyler's neck, for showing us that the hardest roads are often the ones no one sees. The room remained still. Tyler didn't speak. Couldn't. Because in that moment, under fluorescent light surrounded by his brothers and sisters in uniform, he wasn't thinking about medals. He was thinking about 10-mile mornings, about worn-out boots, about a gas station clerk tipping his hat, about the toy jet in his drawer, about his grandfather, and about his mother now sitting quietly in the second row, eyes full of tears she wasn't trying to hide. When the applause finally came, it wasn't thunderous. It didn't need to be. It was real. Later, as people filed out, Trump leaned in with a quiet smile. "You didn't just change policy, son," he said. "You changed hearts." Tyler blinked, holding back 1,000 things he couldn't say. "Thank you, sir." Trump shook his head. "No," he said. "Thank you for walking." The bench wasn't much. Simple wood, matte black plaque, placed just beyond the base gates where pavement met gravel, right at the spot where Tyler's 10-mile walks used to begin. Etched into the plaque were just a few words. "For those who chose duty over ease, inspired by A1C Tyler Brooks." There was no ribbon-cutting ceremony, just a few fellow airmen and base staff who helped carry it into place. Tyler didn't make a speech. He didn't want one. Instead, a few mornings later, he came by himself, coffee in hand, and sat. The air was cool, quiet, the kind of stillness that makes you think. He watched the sun rise just like he used to, slow, golden spilling across the empty highway. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object, a toy plane, old and scuffed, its nose slightly bent. He set it gently on the bench beside him. A symbol, a memory, a beginning. Because journeys don't always start with declarations. Sometimes they start with silence, with worn-out souls, and with one person deciding to show up again and again. Tyler didn't need applause, didn't want a crowd. But that morning, as he sipped his coffee and leaned back, a young man jogged past the gate. New uniform, new face, nervous steps. He slowed when he saw the bench, then saw Tyler. Recognition flickered. "Sir," the young recruit said, breathless, "you're the reason I joined." Tyler didn't stand, just nodded once and smiled. "Then keep walking," he said, "even when it's hard." The recruit gave a sharp salute, then ran on toward formation. Tyler watched him go, not with pride, but with peace. Because some footsteps echo long after they fade, and sometimes a single bench by the roadside becomes a reminder that every quiet step matters.